So in this video I wanted to talk a bit about mixing colors, and I have prepared myself a sheet. This is Ingress paper, but most importantly is that you have a neutral color paper that is not too dark and not too light, so don't take the white or the black papers. So we have different color mixing techniques, let's say. So let's start from the first one, the tonal gradation. So when we have the same color that has lighter, darker and darkest tone to it. So let's take, for example, green. So I have this green that comes from the same family, and I'm going to select, so here I have my lightest version of green. Then I have my next, so this is a yellow green. Then I have a darker version of the same yellow green. And this one is even darker. And let's place one in between here, the yellow green. So why did I put these colors in such a way? Because when we start mixing the colors in pastel, we always have to consider tonal value of each color. So for me, to mix this color and get to that color, we need to move through tone. Why is that important? Because if I were to mix, oh, the wrong one, sorry, this one goes here. I'm gonna clean my hands. So look at that gradation. So it mixes. If you want to keep your colors saturated and have no mud, it's very important that you keep the tonal changes in the same color. So this is the same family. This is the yellow greens. And to mix this color with that one, I need to go through all these tones to actually get to this dark color. If I were to mix this, let's see, let's add this dark here. And we add immediately our lightest value, or even any of these. If we skip this value even, look what it's going to make, the color in between. So this is mud. So instead of getting this beautiful, beautiful color in between, so it doesn't have to be so wide. I made this gradation so wide just so you can see the color shifts and color changes, that they go from one color into the other. But in a drawing, for example, you need to create a smaller area of color change. So you can create a smaller, like you can add narrower strips, let's say, of this color. And instead of getting this color like so in between. So this is what's called mud in soft pastel. Let's do another tonal gradation with another color, for example. If we take, let's say, violet. So I'm going to add this very light violet. Next, I'm going to go into my next value. Then I will go into an even more intense, darker violet. And into an even darker. So you see, it's the same color. So basically, it's the same tone, hue. It doesn't go towards reds or blues, but it gets darker. And in the end, I'm going to add this dark violet. So if we create this transition from the lightest color into our darkest through all of these tonal steps, our transition is going to be a lot more beautiful than if we were to create a mix between, let's take not the lightest one, let's skip a step and we create a mix between the darkest one and this next step, the medium value. So look at the mud that it creates. So this color here is not as beautiful as this one that we have a separate stick for. So this is why it's important to have all these colors, all these sticks of color that are different in pastel, as you can't mix them the same way as you would be mixing the paint, for for example, on the palette. So this is the first way to mix your colors, always through the tonal value. So don't take a very light tone of that particular hue and mix it with the dark one. So now what happens when we need to mix the two colors together? So let's say we have this green, the same green that we used, and we need to mix it with a color that is close on the color wheel. So we have the yellow-green, and let's say we need to mix it in with some of the green, like a cooler version of green. So what do we do? So if I choose my medium value, let's say here, of this green, I need to find the cooler version of this green of the same exact value, or one step lower or one step higher. So I'm going to take the cooler version of green, and this basically is the same value. If you look at it in grayscale, you will see that these two colors, or if you squint your eyes, they have the same darkness. So if you convert them into grayscale, they will have the same value. If I were to take my darkest green, let's say, and I mixed it in with this color, instantly, as the value changes too big, it creates mud in between. So what do we have to do? Again, we do the same thing as we did previously. We need to go through the tonal value. So I have my darkest green, this is the mud, then I'm going through tone, and only then I'm adding this color. Sorry, I'm going to clean my hands. And this creates that beautiful transition. So look at that. Instead of the mud that we had here, we have a beautiful transition into the color that we need. I'm going to shake off the dust. Oh, okay. Move the camera. So what do we do if our colors are distant from one another? Like, let's say this violet and this green, they are on the color wheel further away. Not one sector next to each other, but further away. And in between we see that there are greens, blues, blue violets. So what do we need to do? In this case, again, if I need to mix, let's say, the same tonal values, if I need to mix this green with the same tonal violet, so I'm going to take this violet. So they are very close in value. Again, as I said, you can check it by taking a photo with your phone or looking through the grayscale or squinting. They will be very similar in value, these two. If I were to mix them, that's going to create mud. So let's add this here so I can show you what mud it creates. So this color is not very appealing, right? What do? We go through the color wheel, so we see which colors are in between these two colors. So I see that there are blues, blue-greens, and I need to find either a blue-green or a blue in between the two of the same tonal value again. So I'm going to take a blue-green and the blue, again of the same tonal value. Now we created that colorful transition. But what if we don't need this color to be intense and very bright? So when you mix these two colors, we created this color of mud. This is why in pastel we have so many neutral colors. So this neutral color is kind of yellowish violet, because it creates this neutral color because these colors are almost opposite each other on the color wheel, and they're going to create these grayish colors. So what do if we don't need the blues to be present, but we need this color here? Very easy. We find this color pastel. So I'm going to take a color like this, And now if we have this green and we need to pass into our violet, this one, I'm going to take this color that comes in between the two of the same tonal value. And look at that. This is a much more pleasant color, a much richer color than the mud that we created in between these two. So this is the second rule. So this is very important when you're mixing colors in pastel, to go always through tonal value. I'm going to clean my hands. Now let's mix also colors the same way, but which are distant in value. So for example, if we take this violet, that's very dark, and we need to go into our light blue. So you can see that the value here is very different. What do? We need to select pastels. So if we look at the color wheel, we have our violet and our blue. And actually this is an even blue violet. This is kind of a reddish blue. So we don't have a difference here in the color sectors. So what we need to do, we need to find the values of these colors that are going to bring us closer together to create that transition. And I think that we need one more value of the blue here. So now let's take a look at this, how beautifully it's going to blend together. I'm just going to clean my hands. So look at that. What a beautiful transition. If we were to mix this violet with this light blue, instantly it would create mud. It has to do with how much white there is in each pastel stick, and when there's too much white mixed in with a pastel that doesn't have that much white in it, it creates the mud. So let's do the same thing with different values, but we're going to create the same transition here. So if we were to take our dark violet and we need to go into our very light green. So what do we do then? Again, we found this intermediary color here, but at the same time we need to make sure that our greens are slightly darker to actually transition into this color here. And then from the violets we go a step lower, and we can also find color, the same color here of this intermediary color between the yellow greens and the violets, a bit darker. So I'm going to take this one, for example. This is a darker value. And look at this transition, how beautiful it is. Needs a bit more of this violet here. And look at that. What a beautiful transition we have. Oh, I went in. You see, immediately mud. As you add too much white, creates mud instantly. You have to clean your hands. This is why it's very important to clean your hands when using pastel. Otherwise, you drag the white pigment into places where it shouldn't be. Okay, so this is the transition between two different colors which are far away, which are distant on the color wheel. So this is the yellow-green and the violet. Next, I'm just going to shake off the dust. Next, grays and neutrals. Why do we need those? So very often beginner artists use those bright spectral colors that are actually kind of cutting the eyes when you look at them. So sometimes we need to tone that color down. And how to do that? So let's say I have this very bright blue. I don't need it to be so bright. I need it to be, I don't have a pastel stick that is kind of a grayish blue. So what do I do to create a more muted color of the same tone? So I need to find a gray, warm, cool, doesn't matter, something gray with a tone in it to cool this, to neutralize this color down. So I'm gonna take, let's see, this tone, yes, this is good in tone. So this is a warm gray that has kind of a brownish color to it, but it's still a gray. And it has the same value as this blue. If we squint, it has the same exact value. So if I start adding it into my blue, look what we have. We have that muted blue color that we lack. So here we have that bright color. And here we neutralize it with the same value of our gray. So if we need a color that is more neutral and you don't have that pastel stick available to you, that exact color, this is how you get it. If we were to take the same blue, let's see, let's make it here. Let's make a mix between the same blue and we take a very light gray. A gray whose value is a lot lighter than our blue. Once again, because the value change is so dramatic, creates mud. So mud is not good. Now, what if we need to neutralize our blue, but at the same time we need to make it lighter or darker? So this is the same bright blue that we have. What do? We have this color that kind of neutralizes it. But what do we do to change it value-wise? So to make it lighter, we need to add either the lighter blue, so we go either through lighter blues, or we have the next value of our grays. So let's see, this one's too dark. Let's see this one. Okay. And we go through the value. The same way we can go through lightening. Let's see where I can put this. Okay, let's do it here. So if I take this blue and I go through lighter blues and then I start neutralizing it. So here's our brightest color. And you see, it doesn't create mud. It mixes the lighter value of the same color with this gray. That kind of neutralizes it, but at the same time, it doesn't create the mud. So these are the main rules when mixing colors. And it's very important that you remember them when you're working with pastels. Never to mix, the most important thing is never to mix two distant values together. Always move through steps of value. Be it mixing colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, colors that are distant from each other on the color wheel. You can go either through color, or you can see which color is created in that mix, and then go through the tone, through the value of the tone, and using the pastel sticks that are available to you with that color that is created in the mix of two. It's very useful if you have watercolor, for example, to mix the colors together and see, because in pastel you create the mud, but in watercolor you will see the color that actually results from mixing these colors, especially the ones that are distant from each other on the color wheel, the ones that neutralize each other, that create that beautiful, beautiful color, that kind of grayed out version of colors. And this way you will learn a lot more about the color. So in pastel it creates mud, but in watercolor, if you mix the two colors together, you will see what color results from it. So just to understand the color better, that's a great exercise. And also mixing the colors as I did here. So let's take this. I really like how these squares look after you take off the tape. Okay, so I'm gonna shake the excess dust. And I will show you our result. So these are the mixes that we did with the right and wrong. So you can see dust, mud immediately. And you can see the right transitions and how to achieve those. So I hope that you found this video useful, and I will see you in the future tutorials and some tips and tricks videos too. Thanks for watching. Bye.